This is the Convene podcast. My name is Maggie, Digital Media Editor. In this episode, hosted by Convene's Editor-in-Chief Michelle Russell, we dive into the inspiring journey of Abir Haddoud, whose path from a small Algerian village to global recognition showcases resilience and strategic vision. At 16, Abir moved to France, excelling in engineering, and at 27, she was the youngest executive at a $2 billion company. Abir shares her unique approach to strategy, blending clarity and focus, which she applies to both business and life, empowering others to create impactful change. Enjoy the episode.
I launched my first company, which is a consultancy company where I help businesses build their strategy and be more profitable. I have also a coaching business, and now I am launching my edtech company around this, what I call the how-to. We are going to speak about strategy. For me, strategy is somehow a mix between a what and the how. And so what is what to do, and then there is the how to do it. So all the aim of my edtech company is really to go back to basics and explain how to do simple stuff, how to write a strategy, how to succeed in business, how to make more money.
You know why I love that is because I have been told by others that the how part is tactics. It's not strategy. And I have disagreed because to me, you can't have a plan unless you know how to implement the plan, right?
Exactly. For me, the how is also when we say how to do it, somehow we are also making decisions and trade-off, because in the how we have limited resources and we need to choose which resources and where to focus them, etc. So the how part is very, very important in strategy. And to me, how I differentiate the strategy and the tactics, for me, it's more a matter of time. For me, tactics are more short-term. So you define your strategy, you define how to get there, which is a part of the strategy. And then when you are in your day-to-day job, you may have, some setbacks, some problems. The markets are very volatile and you might have some stuff to deal with. And like the tactics for me are more the day-to-day short-term arbitrage, but within a global strategy that encapsulates the what and the how, which is more mid to long term. So I love business. For me, strategy is a way to develop businesses or to develop successful businesses. And now I am getting into the educational part of it, which I really enjoy very, very much as well. I think at my core, my ikigai is like more about this education part. So now I am getting there and I'm really enjoying it.
Wonderful. Let's talk about how you differentiate your approach to business strategy. You kind of described that, but how is that different from the way other strategy companies or consultants approach it?
I'm going to answer that question with different layers. I'm going to start with the first layer is more about the definition, and then the second layer I will be answering it when we talk about the feminine and the masculine, which is also another subject that I love. So from a definition point of view, I would say in my consulting work, I've always focused on a principle that's a bit unconventional in today's world, which is the less is more. Less is more, or minimalism. Because I think that strategy is overcomplicated. And we're going also to discuss what does it mean and the hype behind the world. But strategy is overcomplicated and businesses end up doing too much without getting the results they want. So my approach is really to help businesses focus on what truly matters, whether it's identifying their core strength, streamlining operations, or making deliberate trade-offs. But for me, it's about creating a strategy that is focused and actionable. And for me, both words are very important because the focus, we are going to talk about it, about the less is more and making trade-offs and making real choices. And the actionable part is also very important because we want to know how to do it and be sure that we have the resources to do so. What we can see today, like a broad strategy, very scattered. So when I go back to the focused and actionable, as I mentioned, we need to do trade-offs and make choices in a good strategy. And to do so, usually I use two dimensions or two parameters to help making these trade-offs and making the right decisions and choices. And these are, first of all, the size of impact. Usually the size of impact is very financial. I mean, businesses are here to make money. So the size of impact is usually financial, even though these days we look also at other impacts, which are social or linked to the planet, to environment, etc. But
Right.
let's be clear, the first one is usually financial, and then we can see also other impact. So here, size matters. And as I mentioned, the timeline is also important. And when we build strategy, we look long term. So for me, it is about making choices. It is about being focused. And to make these choices, we look at two things, the size of impact and the timeline, which is more long-term impact. So if it's like in 1 year, I'm going to be making 10 millions, but then the choice I'm making don't have a long-term impact, usually it's hard to justify this as part of the strategy. It's really these two dimensions.
Right.
And I would add that what differentiates my approach is also this blend somehow of simplicity and clarity. So I prioritize helping clients cut through the noise and make strategic decisions, as I mentioned, that lead to measurable impact. So for me, what drives sustainable growth, being strategic about where you allocate resources and energy rather than trying to do everything at once.
So familiar with that. Yeah, because I think a lot of organizations are guilty of that. And then what happens is they burn out their employees because they're just all trying to cover everything. And it's just impossible because there aren't enough resources. So I love the clarity and just an awareness that you need to have all these other pieces in place.
Exactly. And I think it's even more important these days, as you mentioned. I mean, the post-COVID era is really VUCA, as we say, this volatility, complexity is really enhanced. We've almost like us, we haven't like our generation have never seen this amount of complexity before. And so we are really dealing with a lot of unpredictable stuff, volatility, complexity, and this back to basics way of doing strategy and doing business has really all its sense now because we need to cut through the noise. We need to be simple in order to navigate all of that.
When you say your generation, you mean millennials or have never experienced?
No, for me, all the generation that comes after the Second World War, actually. That's why I've said generation. I mean, all the generation that is still working somehow, the workforce today.
Right.
All of us, I mean, we haven't really seen that. I think the last time, so we've seen people have seen the 1929, so the financial crisis. Right. And then they have been through war. But since then, stuff were like overall pretty simple. We have seen a lot of financial growth, not that much complexity. But these days, like this post-COVID era is really like COVID plus the post-COVID is very complex, and it's one of its kind for the post-war generations.
Right. I think all employees are grappling with that. And then when you talk about complexity, it's also the incredible pace of technology and AI and all of those things that people are really struggling with, I think, definitely making the workplace much more complicated. You saw that Amazon is requiring everyone to
Yes.
go back to the office 5 days a week, and there's big uproar about that because flexibility is one thing that people really started to prize after COVID and recognizing that working from home afforded them with a balance, a work-life balance they did not have before. So I think we're still navigating through that, as you said, just all of these things that have changed fundamentally about our society since COVID.
Definitely. And I think we also sense a lot of fear. It's fear from the side of employees, but also fear from corporations. And they are really struggling with the trust issue. And I'm very happy that in Convene EMEA, like we are talking also about trust, because in this new hybrid model, trust is key. And
Right.
like you can see that corporates like Amazon struggle with that dimension and struggle with that value. I am too very curious to see what's coming ahead, like with this kind of decisions.
Right. And I think a lot of people are, because if 80% of the workforce, which is a statistic I read, wants flexibility, how is Amazon going to be able to recruit new hires if this is their policy? You know, some people think it was just like an easy way for them to fire people, you know, rather than
Maybe
having to
yes.
lay them off, just force them to quit. But it's all very interesting. I'm very interested in your work and research about women in leadership. We're also seeing globally repression of women and their rights. And it just seems to be like this backlash against DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. I don't think just in the US, I do think it's happening elsewhere. So I'm very interested in hearing why you think that's a trend and how to really work against that trend.
You know, today I really believe that women bring so many strength to leadership and to business, and that is often go underappreciated. So that's a given somehow. And I have felt like I am a woman, so like I had to struggle with all the diversity issues. Now I am a woman, I'm not European. When I came to France, I was very young, 16. So somehow I had really to battle my way to where I am today. And I have noticed that as women, we are always trying to find balance in a system that is at its core male dominated. And for me, it goes beyond just the workforce. I mean, the capitalism as a system is a masculine system. Actually, it's always about action, always about delivering, always about moving forward, always about growth. It's never really about taking time and patience and long-term view, etc. And so we are trying to find balance as women in that model, which is male dominated or a masculine system. And often we think that our feminine traits are a weakness, where in fact, I truly believe that these are strengths. And so my number one motivation to start writing this book, and I'm also coaching a lot of women, is to help us women own these strengths and show that these traits help balance the overall system. So I can give you some examples. For me, masculine and feminine are not about gender. For me, each one of us has both masculine traits and feminine traits. So women are more maybe in their zone of genius with feminine traits, and males are more in their zone of genius with masculine traits. So for me, one of the key feminine traits is, for example, empathy. Women are often better at understanding and managing people, which is crucial for building strong, motivated teams. And we are also more collaborative. We are more for innovation, inclusivity in decision making, etc. And I believe that the best leaders today balance both these masculine and feminine qualities. So traits like empathy, as I mentioned, intuition, collaboration, which are from the feminine side, alongside with decisiveness, confidence, action, which is more of the masculine side, blending them together makes a more well-rounded, adaptable leader. And I think that people are starting somehow giving more value traits to vulnerability, emotional intelligence in leaders, which were once seen as a weakness. But now we are starting to recognize this as essential. So for me, the shift is opening up more space for women. We are definitely not there yet, but I think the shift is opening up more space for women to step into leadership roles and celebrate these qualities that make them exceptional, I would say.
Can you give me an example of an actual female leader where you have seen that kind of trait exemplified?
Yes, I love this question. We don't have that many, you know.
I know.
And most of our role leaders, unfortunately, or as we show them today, or these successful ladies, they don't really, they act like men somehow. So they don't really embody these feminine qualities. There's this lady that I love, which is the previous prime minister of New Zealand.
I knew you were going to talk about her. I have a quote from her on my wall. I love her.
Really?
Yeah.
This lady is amazing because she really managed to succeed in a very difficult job while honoring all her feminine side. I mean, we've seen her crying, we've seen her with her baby working, and yeah, I really respect that. The other, sad enough, I would say, the other models that I have are usually women entrepreneurs. You know, somehow I feel like these new generation of digital entrepreneurs manage to make a living and to earn money, etc., while preserving their families and having a family. So this digital world is also kind of is helping in that sense, because otherwise, I mean, women CEOs of like corporation, of classical corporation as we knew them, or women in politics, like a majority of them, either like, I don't know, like they don't really represent, I would say, these feminine qualities. They speak like men, they work all the time, they don't really honor the family side. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I'm so glad you mentioned her. I think she's great. So actually, if you could just talk like very briefly about how you think your engineering background really informs your approach.
I think it's a very interesting question because I truly believe it shaped who I am today and also my way of looking at strategy. My engineering background, I would say, gave me a really structured way of thinking about strategy. So engineers, they are basically trained to solve problems by breaking them down into smaller, more manageable parts. That's a job of an engineer, basically. So I do apply that same mindset to business strategy, which means instead of focusing on the entire business landscape at once, I help companies narrow down their focus to the essential components and see what's really driving value and what's getting in the way. So it's like really simplifying a complex system into more efficient, functional form.
Love that.
So, yeah.
I love
That's
that.
how it helped me. And I remember you also asked me about strategy as an overused term and that there is no real consensus. So I totally agree with you on that. I think this term is a bit of an overused term, and it's thrown around in different contexts, and sometimes it can really lose its meaning. But as I told you, and we like at the beginning, for me, strategy is really about making choices. And I'll be speaking about the definition of Michael Porter, who is a very well-known strategist. And for him, strategy about deciding on what not to do. So really, it goes back on this point of making choices and about focusing on where we are going to compete, how we are going to win, and what are we willing to give up.
Wonderful. What is your take on the value of bringing people together in person? So this is the essential job of our audience, right? Is to create these environments to gather people together for whether it's scientific, academic, medical, trade, conferences, conventions. Considering all the changes that have taken place since the pandemic, what do you think the value of face-to-face events is?
I am a true believer of the face-to-face events, even in a hybrid world. I truly believe that in-person conferences still hold tremendous value, even in this post-pandemic world. So I think there is something about the energy and connections you make face-to-face that simply cannot be replicated in virtual settings. And I think that people, as humans, we thrive on personal interaction and the spontaneous conversation that happen in in-person events. And I think really can lead to breakthroughs and that you would never get over Zoom or as Zoom calls.
Yeah, I love that.
Said, I think that this, as we mentioned about Amazon, like the pandemic has made us rethink the way we approach work. So flexibility is no longer luxury. Now it's a necessity. So the hybrid and remote are here to stay. But I think the most successful companies are the ones that can balance that flexibility with the moments of real in-person connection with digital flexible work. So I think the workplace now has become more adaptable, more digital, but hopefully more human also in how it supports employees.
I love that. That's great. Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everything. We're good.
Good. Oh, thank you, Abir. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Michelle.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, do give us a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more industry insights, visit pcma.org/convene. Until next time.